Welcome to another book review. Today we're tackling a much harder topic. Today we're tackling Nietzsche. This it's going to be more like a book review, but more like how to read Nietzsche. Before we start, I want to clarify that I am not a Nietzsche specialist. I admire Nietzsche quite a lot. I spent hours and hours reading Nietzsche, and I cannot say that I have understood Nietzsche in any way or form to believe that I truly know his philosophy. But I did spend quite a lot of time reading Nietzsche, and I think Nietzsche is something that many people should read. And to truly understand Nietzsche, or to the extent that each individual can understand Nietzsche, you have to attempt at least to try read all of his works and actually read it multiple of times. The approach we're going to take is how to read him and my personal outlook on the books without actually uncovering the philosophy behind it. You can find way more qualified individuals to do that. I'm just trying to help individuals to start with their journey to read Nietzsche. And my focus is exactly on that, the journey to read Nietzsche. Because reading Nietzsche is a journey. Now, as many young men, when I originally started, I started by reading other people writing about Nietzsche. So, the Giants of Philosophy by Richard Schacht, or the Great Courses Plus on Nietzsche. And at the time, I thought I kind of understood Nietzsche through these books, but then I kind of understood that they completely missed the mark, or at least completely missed the mark for me. So I didn't find these books truly helpful for me to truly apprehend and understand Nietzsche. But nonetheless, I found them quite useful to actually fathom and start to understand the concepts behind what Nietzsche was trying to accomplish. And thus, my first recommendation is go out and find books that refer to Nietzsche and modern political philosophers that try to uh, summarize Nietzsche, and read them first, just to get an idea of what you are bringing yourself to. Of course, you must be aware of the possible biases that might encompass, but nonetheless, it is a good starting point. The general concepts of his books, and here you can pause to read them by yourself. I'm not going to go into much detail, but each different book covers different topics, but at the same time, they cover the same topics. It's just different angles where Nietzsche see the life of humanity and develops his fundamental concepts. Like, for example, Beyond Good and Evil, which is quite popular. He criticized morality, he criticized religion quite extensively. Well, then in the gay science, he covers a lot of topics, but at the same time, makes some arguments, for example, not so anti religious. And in the Genealogy of Morals, he comes to kind of summarize his work and recreate a more generalized development of morality. Human to Human, this is a collection of aphorisms that covers a lot of topics, and it's interesting if you care about human nature and the cultures that he's trying to tangle, but it's not as clear as it sounds. The Antichrist, which he criticizes Christianity, and many challenge him to be an atheist because of it. My personal outlook on this is completely different. Uh, in general, though, there isn't one single book that you can start with. And I disagree that many people say, okay, you should start from this book and then read this one and read this one and so forth. Start with which book. So go and read the summaries and of people that written about him, what each book talks about specifically, and then you go and pick what intrigues you the most. In general, all of his books are quite great in its own way or form. Human All to Human, for example, focuses a lot on the human condition, which for me is something very fascinating concept. The Antichrist was a work that I first stumbled when I had my first anti-religious thoughts, and it uses it as a huge criticism of morality and the same as Beyond Good and Evil, and it judges other philosophers. And in general, Nietzsche is quite aggressive in his work against other philosophers, and you might get offended a bit by his work. Nonetheless, though, Nietzsche, to read him, my two favorite books, and that's my own personal recommendation, is on the Genealogy of Morals, which the irony is this is a book that you cannot start with, and this is what I'm concluding with. You cannot really start with the Genealogy of Morals because it feels like a summarization of all of his previous works, and at the same time an analogy of the development of human morality. But nonetheless, it's the easiest to read through book. And then the Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which for me is probably the best book for Nietzsche, from various concepts that he argues throughout his books, mainly the concept of Übermensch, where I care the most, so the super moral human. And it's quite a brilliant work. For me, it's Nietzsche's attempt to create his own form of a Bible. And he really tries to do that. And ironically enough, in my opinion, he kind of fails to achieve that, but nonetheless produces a truly masterful work by doing so. And there are also some very cool topics there that you wouldn't expect. He kind of predicts what happens when you lack morality, what it happens when humans lose the fear of God. And in his a very famous phrase in the book that it's one of my favorites, I call unto ye, ye preachers of equality, and so forth. It's a quote that I really like you to go and search and find. Or, for example, God is dead and we have killed him. Who are we, the murderers of all murderers? In the end, I will argue, start by any of his 5 works here to get a good sense of the general concepts he tries to tackle. Beyond Good and Evil is a good choice, a good start, the same as the Gay Science. Human to Human, All to Human is a more specific book. Ecce Homus is also a collection of essays, so not the best one to start. And in general, to conclude, just start with reading someone outside of Nietzsche, talking about Nietzsche, then tackle few of his 5 books just to get a read on, and then read these 2. These are, in my opinion, the most important works of Nietzsche, or at least my own most personal influential books. Now, a general recommendation for everyone, Nietzsche is really hard to read and practically hard to read. I'm really talking about the way he uses language. Even because there are translations, but even I guess for German speakers, Nietzsche is truly hard to apprehend what he means by each different connotations, and thus the audiobook versions of Nietzsche are really, really hard to perceive. So unfortunately, you will inevitably have to read him multiple of times to truly understand what he tries to accomplish and how he tries to accomplish it. So this has been my recommendation in general. So read few authors outside of Nietzsche, read 1 or 2 of his major books, then tackle the Genealogy of the Morals and Das Book Zarathustra, and then go back and tackle the rest of his books, and then reread him, and then reread him, and then reread him, and then go and read Kazantzaki's The Zorpas of Kazantzakis, which really he tries to play a bit with Nietzsche. Thank you again for watching. Please like and subscribe, and see you next time.